The early morning sun cast long shadows through the tall windows of Phoenix's Maricopa County Superior Court as families, lawyers, and court officials filed into courtroom 4C. The air was thick with tension and the weight of impending justice. At exactly 9 a.m., the heavy wooden doors opened to admit what many considered the most heartbreaking case of the year. 8-year-old Emma Rodriguez walked slowly down the center aisle, her tiny hand clasped tightly in her mother's trembling grip. She wore a pale blue dress that her grandmother had carefully pressed that morning, along with white Mary Jane shoes that seemed too big for her small feet. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, held by a butterfly clip that had once been her favorite. But the vibrant, laughing child who had loved that butterfly clip 6 months ago was gone, replaced by a hollow-eyed little girl who moved like a ghost through her own life. Maria Rodriguez fought back tears as she watched her daughter's face remain expressionless, staring straight ahead with the blank look that had become all too familiar. Beside her, Carlos Rodriguez's jaw was set with determination, though his hands shook slightly as he adjusted his best tie for the third time. They had waited 6 agonizing months for this day, 6 months of watching their once joyful daughter retreat into a world of silence and shadows. At the prosecutor's table, Linda Walsh shuffled through her case files with growing anxiety. 23 years of courtroom experience had taught her to read cases like books, and this one was telling a story she didn't want to believe. Without Emma's testimony, Marcus Thompson would walk free. The physical evidence was strong: blood at the scene, a dropped wallet, medical records showing recent dog bite wounds. But defense attorney James Mitchell was too skilled to let circumstantial evidence convict his client. Mitchell sat at the defense table with the confident posture of a man who knew he was about to win. His expensive suit was perfectly tailored, his silver hair impeccably styled, and his smile held just the right amount of sympathetic concern for the troubled child, whose unreliable memories would soon crumble the prosecution's case. He had built his reputation on reasonable doubt, and an 8-year-old trauma victim who hadn't spoken about the incident was reasonable doubt personified. Behind him sat Marcus Thompson, 34 years old, with dead eyes and a snake tattoo coiling up his left arm. He showed no emotion as he watched the little girl who could send him to prison for 15 years. His criminal record told a story of escalating violence: petty theft, burglary, assault, and this case would either end his crime spree or set him free to continue it. In the gallery, Detective Sarah Chun sat with perfect posture, her uniform crisp and professional. Beside her on the floor lay Rex, a magnificent German shepherd whose intelligent brown eyes seemed to take in every detail of the courtroom. Rex had been Chun's partner for 5 years, and in that time they had worked hundreds of cases together. Drug busts, missing persons, armed suspects. Rex had faced them all with unwavering courage. But today felt different. Today, the weight of a child's future hung in the balance. Rex's ears twitched at the sound of soft crying from the front row. His training had taught him to remain still and focused, but something about the small person entering the witness area made his protective instincts stir. He could sense fear, trauma, and pain radiating from multiple people in the room, but the strongest source was the little girl approaching the large wooden chair. Judge Patricia Martinez entered the courtroom with the bearing of someone who had presided over thousands of cases, from simple traffic violations to death penalty trials. But as she looked down at Emma Rodriguez, climbing into the witness stand, a chair so large that her feet didn't touch the ground, she felt her professional composure waver. In her 25 years on the bench, she had never seen a child who looked so utterly broken. The courtroom fell silent, except for the gentle whir of the air conditioning and the soft scratching of the court reporter's fingers on her stenotype machine. Emma sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, staring at a point somewhere beyond the back wall of the courtroom. Her eyes, which her parents remembered as bright and full of mischief, were now flat and distant. "Good morning, Emma," Judge Martinez said softly, her voice gentler than it had ever been in this courtroom. "Do you know why you're here today?" Emma's only response was a barely perceptible nod. She had been prepared by victim advocates, child psychologists, and the prosecutor's office. But all the preparation in the world couldn't bridge the chasm that trauma had carved in her young mind. Prosecutor Walsh approached slowly, her heels clicking softly on the polished floor. "Emma, can you tell us your name?" Silence. "Can you tell us how old you are?" More silence. Emma's breathing became slightly more rapid, and her mother noticed the tiny telltale signs of anxiety. The way Emma's fingers began to fidget with the hem of her dress, the slight tremor in her lower lip. Defense attorney Mitchell leaned back in his chair with barely concealed satisfaction. He didn't need to say a word. The prosecution's case was collapsing before his eyes. He caught Thompson's eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. They both knew how this would end. In the gallery, Detective Chun found herself holding her breath. She had testified in dozens of trials, but she had never felt so invested in an outcome. Rex seemed to sense her tension, his head lifting slightly as he scanned the room with professional alertness. Judge Martinez tried a different approach. "Emma, would you like some water? Or maybe we could take a short break." For the first time, Emma's eyes moved, shifting briefly to meet the judge's gaze before darting away again. The judge saw something in that fleeting moment, not just fear, but intelligence. This child understood everything that was happening around her, but some invisible wall prevented her from participating in it. As the minutes ticked by, the silence in courtroom 4C became oppressive. Court officers shifted uncomfortably in their positions. Jury members, who had been selected the previous week, watched with growing concern. The gallery, filled with supporters of the Rodriguez family, police officers, and court watchers, waited with held breath for something, anything, to break through to this traumatized little girl. But Emma Rodriguez remained locked in her silence. And with each passing moment, justice seemed to slip further away from everyone's grasp. The monster who had shattered her world sat just yards away, his freedom hanging on her ability to find her voice in this intimidating room full of strangers. None of them knew that salvation would come from an unexpected source: 4 legs, pointed ears, and a heart trained to serve and protect. The 15-minute recess felt like an eternity as the courtroom slowly emptied. Judge Martinez had called the break after watching Emma Rodriguez sit in complete silence for 20 agonizing minutes, her small frame rigid with terror, unable to utter a single word about the night that had forever changed her family's life. Maria Rodriguez burst through the courtroom doors and immediately collapsed against the cool marble wall of the courthouse hallway, her carefully composed facade crumbling like a house of cards. Her shoulders shook with violent sobs that she had been holding back for hours, days, maybe even months. The sound echoed off the high ceilings, drawing concerned glances from passing attorneys, court officers, and other families dealing with their own legal battles. "She won't talk to anyone," Maria sobbed to Prosecutor Linda Walsh, who had followed the family into the hallway. "Not to anyone. Therapists, doctors, child psychologists, victim advocates. We've tried everything. Even her grandmother, who she used to tell all her secrets to, can't get through to her. She just stares and nods, like she's trapped inside herself." Walsh knelt beside the broken mother, her own heart breaking as she watched this family's pain unfold. In her 2 decades of prosecuting violent crimes, she had worked with hundreds of trauma victims, but Emma's case was unlike anything she had ever encountered. The child had witnessed something so horrific that her mind had essentially shut down. creating an impenetrable wall of silence around the memories that could put a dangerous criminal behind bars. Carlos Rodriguez stood nearby, his hands clenched into fists at his sides, his face a mask of barely controlled rage and helplessness. He wore his only good suit, the one he had bought for his wedding 15 years ago and only brought out for the most important occasions. His work-calloused hands trembled slightly as he reached into his pocket for a tissue for his wife. Before that night, she never stopped talking, Carlos said, his voice thick with emotion. Emma would chatter constantly about her friends, her teacher, the stray cat she wanted to adopt, the butterfly she saw in our garden. She had an opinion about everything, questions about everything. She wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up because she loved animals so much. His voice broke as he continued. That night, after we found her hiding in the closet, after the ambulance took Buddy away, after the police finished taking pictures of our destroyed home, she just stopped. Like someone had turned off a switch inside her. The doctor said it was severe traumatic mutism. The children sometimes go silent after experiencing something too terrible to process. Maria wiped her eyes with a crumpled tissue, her mascara leaving dark streaks down her cheeks. We've spent our life savings on specialists. Dr. Jennifer Adams at Phoenix Children's Hospital, Dr. Michael Chun, who specializes in childhood trauma. Even Dr. Rodriguez, no relation, who flew in from Los Angeles because she's supposed to be the best in the country at treating selective mutism. What do they say? Walsh asked gently, though she dreaded the answer. They all say the same thing, Carlos replied bitterly. That Emma remembers everything. Her cognitive tests are perfect. She understands every question, follows every instruction. Physically, there's nothing wrong with her voice or her ability to speak. But emotionally, psychologically, something is blocking her from talking about that night. Some of them think it might take years of therapy. Others aren't sure she'll ever fully recover. As they spoke, defense attorney James Mitchell approached with the predatory smile of a shark sensing blood in the water. His expensive Italian leather shoes clicked confidently on the marble floor as he joined their small circle. Everything about him screamed success and arrogance, from his perfectly tailored Armani suit to his gold Rolex watch to the silk tie that probably cost more than Carlos made in a week. Ms. Walsh, Mitchell said with mock sympathy, I couldn't help but overhear. This is exactly what I was afraid of when we started this trial. That poor little girl is clearly not ready to testify. The trauma she's experienced is heartbreaking. Truly heartbreaking. His words dripped with false compassion, but his eyes were cold and calculating. My client is willing to be reasonable here. Marcus will plead guilty to simple trespassing, a misdemeanor. He'll do 90 days in county jail, pay restitution for any damages to your home, and agree to stay away from your family. It's a generous offer, considering the complete lack of credible testimony. Lack of credible testimony? Maria's voice rose to nearly a shout, her grief transforming into fury. Your client broke into our home. He killed our dog. He terrorized my baby. Mitchell's expression didn't change. Mrs. Rodriguez, I understand your emotions, but emotions don't constitute legal evidence. Your daughter can't testify. Without her testimony, the prosecution has no case. The blood evidence could have come from anywhere. The wallet, well, my client claims it was stolen from his car earlier that day. The dog bite wounds? He was attacked by a stray dog in a park. There's reasonable doubt everywhere you look. Walsh felt her carefully built case crumbling around her. She knew Mitchell was right from a legal standpoint. Without Emma's testimony, the physical evidence was circumstantial at best. A good defense attorney, and Mitchell was very good, could create reasonable doubt about every piece of evidence they had collected. Take the plea, Mitchell continued, his voice becoming harder. Your witness is broken. This trial is only going to traumatize her further. Cut your losses and let my client plead to trespassing. At least then he does some time, pay some restitution. And this family can start to heal. The word broken hit Maria like a physical blow. Don't you dare call my daughter broken, she whispered, her voice deadly quiet. She's hurt, she's scared, but she is not broken. But even as she said the words, doubt crept into her voice. 6 months of silence. 6 months of watching her vibrant, talkative daughter retreat further and further into herself. 6 months of unanswered questions and empty conversations and bedtime stories told to a child who stared at the ceiling instead of reacting to the voices and characters she used to love. Detective Sarah Chun had been observing the conversation from a respectful distance, Rex sitting calmly beside her. She had dealt with defense attorneys like Mitchell before, smooth talkers who viewed justice as a game to be won rather than a truth to be discovered. Something about his smug confidence made her blood boil. She approached the group slowly, Rex matching her pace perfectly. "Excuse me," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent years dealing with criminals and their representatives. "I couldn't help but overhear. Mr. Mitchell, your client didn't just trespass. He broke into a family's home in the middle of the night, terrified a child, and killed a family pet that was trying to protect her. That's not trespassing. That's burglary, cruelty to animals, and child endangerment." Mitchell turned his calculating gaze to the detective. "Officer Chun, isn't it? I'm sure you're very passionate about your work, but passion doesn't change the legal realities we're facing here. Without testimony from the alleged victim, there's no case." Rex seemed to sense the tension in the air. His ears perked up, and his intelligent brown eyes moved from person to person, reading the emotional undercurrents of the conversation. He had been trained to detect drugs, track suspects, and protect his partner, but his natural empathy made him acutely aware of human distress. As Mitchell prepared to deliver what he clearly believed would be his final argument, none of them noticed that Emma Rodriguez had quietly slipped out of the courtroom and was now standing in the doorway, watching and listening to every word. Her dark eyes, which had been vacant for months, were now focused intently on the group of adults arguing about her future. And for the first time since that terrible night, something stirred behind those eyes, a spark of awareness that would soon change everything. The bailiff's voice cut through the tension in the hallway like a blade. "All rise. Court is back in session." The 15-minute recess had felt like hours to everyone involved, but it had resolved nothing. Emma Rodriguez still hadn't spoken. The defense attorney was still confident of victory, and Prosecutor Walsh was still facing the collapse of her case. As the families, lawyers, and spectators filed back into courtroom 4C, the atmosphere was noticeably heavier than before. Word had spread through the courthouse about the silent witness, and several off-duty court personnel had quietly slipped in to observe what many were calling the most heartbreaking case in recent memory. Judge Patricia Martinez took her seat behind the imposing mahogany bench, her usually stern expression softened by genuine concern for the small girl who would soon return to the witness stand. In her quarter-century of presiding over trials, she had developed a reputation for running an efficient, no-nonsense courtroom. But today, efficiency seemed less important than compassion. Emma walked back down the center aisle with the same ghostly composure she had shown earlier, her small hand once again clasped in her mother's trembling grip. But something had changed during the recess, something so subtle that only someone who knew her intimately might notice. Her steps were slightly more purposeful, her head held a fraction higher, and her dark eyes, which had been vacant and staring for months, now seemed to be taking in her surroundings with a new awareness. Maria Rodriguez helped her daughter climb back into the witness chair, whispering soft words of encouragement in Spanish that Emma seemed to hear but didn't acknowledge. Carlos sat in the front row, his jaw clenched so tightly that the muscles in his neck stood out like cords. He had spent the entire recess praying to every saint he could remember, begging for a miracle that would give his daughter her voice back. Detective Sarah Chun resumed her position in the gallery, Rex settling beside her with the patient discipline that had made him one of the most reliable K-9 officers in the Phoenix Police Department. But Rex was more alert than usual, his ears twitching at sounds that hadn't bothered him before, his intelligent brown eyes scanning the courtroom with heightened awareness. Something in the air had changed, a shift in the emotional energy that his finely tuned senses could detect but not quite understand. Defense attorney James Mitchell sat at his table with the relaxed posture of a man who believed victory was inevitable. During the recess, he had already begun mentally composing his closing argument about reasonable doubt and the unreliability of traumatized witnesses. His client, Marcus Thompson, showed no emotion as he stared at the back wall of the courtroom, his snake tattoo visible beneath his rolled-up sleeves. Prosecutor Linda Walsh approached the witness stand with the desperate determination of someone making a final stand. She had built her entire case around Emma's testimony, and without it, a dangerous criminal would walk free to potentially harm other families. The thought of explaining to the Rodriguez family that their daughter's silence had allowed her attacker to escape justice was almost unbearable. "Emma," Walsh said gently, kneeling beside the witness chair so she was at the child's eye level. "I know this is scary. I know it's hard. But there are people here who want to help you. Can you try to tell us what happened that night?" Emma's response was the same hollow silence that had greeted every question for the past 6 months. But this time, instead of staring blankly ahead, her eyes began to move around the courtroom. Slowly, methodically, she looked from face to face. The judge, the jury, her parents, the lawyers, the spectators in the gallery. Judge Martinez leaned forward slightly. "Emma, would you like me to clear the courtroom? We could ask everyone except the necessary people to leave, so it's not so crowded." Still no response, but Emma's scan of the room continued. Her gaze moved past the court reporter, past the bailiff, past the prosecutor and defense attorney. Then suddenly, her eyes locked onto something in the gallery, and for the first time in months, her facial expression changed. Rex had been lying calmly beside Detective Chun's chair, but something, perhaps the intensity of Emma's stare, made him lift his head and look directly at her. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the traumatized 8-year-old and the trained police dog regarded each other across the courtroom. Emma's breathing, which had been shallow and rapid with anxiety, began to slow. Her rigid posture relaxed slightly. And then, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds, the faintest hint of recognition flickered in her dark eyes. "Detective." Chun noticed the change immediately. Rex's ears had perked up, his body language shifting from passive observation to active engagement. The dog seemed to sense something that the humans in the room had missed. A connection, a possibility. A bridge across the chasm of trauma that had kept Emma locked in silence. "Your Honor," Chun said quietly, raising her hand to get the judge's attention. "May I approach?" Judge Martinez looked puzzled, but nodded. "Detective Chun, you may approach the bench." As Chun stood and walked toward the judge's bench, Rex naturally followed, his training requiring him to stay close to his partner. But as they moved closer to the witness stand, something extraordinary happened. Emma Rodriguez, who hadn't shown interest in anything or anyone for 6 months, began to track Rex's movement with her eyes. "Your Honor," Chun whispered, "I think my K-9 partner may be able to help. She seems to be responding to him in a way she's not responding to people." Mitchell immediately objected. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. There's no precedent for introducing a dog into witness testimony." But Judge Martinez was watching Emma's face, seeing the first signs of life the child had shown all morning. Mr. Mitchell, this court has broad discretion in ensuring witness comfort and safety. Detective Chun, please continue. As Rex drew closer to the witness stand, the change in Emma became more pronounced. Her hands, which had been clenched in her lap, relaxed. Her shoulders, hunched with tension, began to lower. And then, as Rex stopped directly in front of her chair, something miraculous happened. Emma Rodriguez slowly raised her right hand and pointed directly at the German Shepherd. The courtroom, which had been filled with the usual sounds of rustling, papers, shifting bodies, and whispered conversations, fell completely silent. Every person in the room seemed to hold their breath, sensing that something momentous was about to occur. For several heartbeats, nothing happened. Emma's finger remained pointed at Rex, her eyes locked on his intelligent face. Rex, with the intuitive wisdom that had made him an exceptional police dog, remained perfectly still, allowing this broken child to study him, to process whatever thoughts and feelings were stirring behind her traumatized psyche. And then, in a voice that was barely above a whisper, but carried clearly through the silent courtroom, Emma Rodriguez spoke her first words about that terrible night 6 months ago. "Good dog." The two simple words hit the courtroom like a thunderclap. Gasps rose from the gallery. Maria Rodriguez's hand flew to her mouth as tears began streaming down her face. Carlos leaned forward in his seat, hardly daring to believe what he had heard. Prosecutor Walsh felt her heart skip a beat as hope flickered to life for the first time in months. But perhaps the most remarkable reaction came from Rex himself, the trained police dog who had been taught to remain impassive. In all situations, seemed to understand the significance of Emma's words. His tail gave a single, barely perceptible wag, and he took one careful step closer to the witness stand. Defense attorney Mitchell's confident expression faltered for the first time since the trial began. This wasn't part of his carefully calculated strategy. This wasn't something he had prepared for in all his years of defending criminals. This was uncharted territory, and for the first time, he felt the ground shifting beneath his feet. Judge Martinez, who had presided over thousands of cases without showing emotion, found herself blinking back tears. In 25 years on the bench, she had never witnessed anything like this moment, the precise instant when a traumatized child began to find her way back to the world of the living. Emma's gaze remained fixed on Rex, but now there was something different in her eyes. The vacant stare was gone, replaced by a spark of recognition, of memory, of connection to something beyond her trauma. And in that moment, everyone in courtroom 4C knew that everything was about to change. The two words "good dog" hung in the air like a prayer answered. For a moment that stretched into eternity, nobody in courtroom 4C dared to move or breathe, afraid that any sound might shatter the fragile miracle that was unfolding before their eyes. Emma Rodriguez, who had been trapped in silence for 6 months, had finally spoken. Detective Sarah Chun felt goosebumps rise on her arms as she watched Rex's reaction to Emma's words. The German Shepherd, trained to maintain professional composure, in all situations, seemed to understand that something extraordinary was happening. His dark eyes remained fixed on Emma's face, and his body language shifted from passive observation to gentle, protective attention. Judge Patricia Martinez made a decision that would later be studied in law schools across the country. "Detective Chun," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "would you please bring Rex closer to the witness stand?" Defense attorney James Mitchell shot to his feet. "Your Honor, I must object. This is completely unprecedented. There's no legal basis for." "Overruled," Judge Martinez said firmly, her gaze never leaving Emma's face. "This court has the discretion to ensure witness comfort and safety. Detective Chun, please proceed." As Chun began walking Rex toward the witness stand, Every eye in the courtroom followed their movement. The soft clicking of the dog's nails on the polished floor was the only sound in the otherwise silent room. Rex moved with the confident grace of a professional, but there was something different in his demeanor, a gentleness that seemed to emerge specifically for this traumatized child. Emma watched Rex approach with an intensity that startled her parents. For months, Maria and Carlos had tried everything to break through their daughter's wall of silence. They had brought her favorite toys, her beloved books, even her best friend, Sophie, for playdates. Nothing had worked. But now, as this police dog drew near, Emma was showing more awareness and engagement than she had since that horrible night. When Rex reached the witness stand, Detective Chun quietly commanded him to sit. The dog obeyed immediately, positioning himself directly in front of Emma's chair. From her elevated position, Emma could look down into Rex's intelligent face. And something magical began to happen. Can I pet him?" Emma asked, her voice small and uncertain, but unmistakably clear. A question sent a shockwave through the courtroom. Prosecutor Linda Walsh felt her heart skip a beat. Maria Rodriguez gasped audibly, pressing her hand to her mouth as tears began streaming down her face. These were the first words Emma had directed to another person since the attack. "Yes, sweetheart," Judge Martinez said gently. "Detective Chun, is Rex comfortable with that?" Chun nodded, watching carefully as Emma slowly extended her hand toward Rex's head. The dog remained perfectly still, allowing the child to touch his soft ears. The moment Emma's small fingers made contact with Rex's fur, her entire body seemed to relax for the first time in months. "You're so soft," Emma whispered, stroking Rex's head with the careful reverence of someone who understood the precious nature of the moment. "You have kind eyes, just like—" Her voice trailed off, but for the first time, she wasn't retreating into silence. Instead, she seemed to be searching for words, fighting to express something important. "Just like who, Emma?" Prosecutor Walsh asked gently, moving closer to the witness stand. Emma looked up at Walsh, then back at Rex. "Just like Buddy," she said, her voice growing stronger. "My dog Buddy. He had kind eyes like you do." The mention of Buddy sent a visible shudder through Emma's small frame, but she didn't retreat into silence. Instead, she continued petting Rex, drawing strength from the physical contact with the gentle animal. "Buddy was my best friend," Emma continued, her words coming more easily now. "He slept in my bed every night. Mama said he was too big, but Papa said that's what made him the best protector." Detective Chun watched in amazement as Rex seemed to understand his role in this healing process. The dog remained motionless, except for his eyes, which tracked Emma's every movement with protective attention. Years of training had taught Rex to read human emotions, but this was different. This was instinctive, a connection that transcended professional protocol. "Emma," Judge Martinez said carefully, "would you like Rex to stay with you while we talk?" Emma nodded vigorously, the first decisive gesture she had made in months. "Yes, please. He makes me feel safe, like Buddy did." Marcus Thompson shifted uncomfortably in his chair. For the first time since the trial began, his casual indifference was replaced by visible unease. He had been counting on Emma's silence to secure his freedom, but now this unexpected development was threatening his carefully constructed defense. Defense attorney Mitchell found himself in uncharted territory. His entire strategy had been built around the assumption that Emma wouldn't be able to testify. Now, faced with a child who was beginning to open up, he scrambled to find a new approach. "Your Honor," Mitchell said, rising slowly, "while we're all sympathetic to this child's situation, we must remember that testimony given under these unusual circumstances may not be reliable. The presence of the dog could be influencing her memories, creating false—" "Mr. Mitchell," Judge Martinez interrupted, her voice carrying a warning edge. The witness is finally able to communicate. Unless you have specific legal grounds for your objection, this court will proceed. Emma, who had been listening to the exchange while continuing to pet Rex, suddenly looked directly at the defense attorney. It was the first time she had made eye contact with anyone other than Rex since entering the courtroom. "He's not making me remember things," she said, her voice clear and surprisingly strong. "I always remembered. I just couldn't say it out loud. But Rex reminds me that there are good dogs and good people who protect children from bad people." The courtroom erupted in whispers. This wasn't just a breakthrough. This was a complete transformation. Emma Rodriguez, the silent victim, who had been written off by the defense as unreliable, was becoming a formidable witness. Prosecutor Walsh felt a surge of hope, unlike anything she had experienced in her legal career. But she knew she had to proceed carefully. This miracle could be fragile, and one wrong move could send Emma back into her protective silence. "Emma," Walsh said softly, "would you like to tell us about Buddy? About what kind of dog he was?" Emma's face brightened as she looked down at Rex. Buddy was brave and strong, just like Rex. He was a German Shepherd too, but he was brown and black, instead of black and tan. He always knew when something was wrong. The night the bad man came, Buddy knew before anyone else did. For the first time in 6 months, Emma Rodriguez was talking about that night. Not in therapy sessions with gentle psychologists, not in safe spaces with victim advocates, but in open court in front of the man who had shattered her world. And she was just getting started. Rex seemed to sense the importance of his role. He remained perfectly still, a living, breathing security blanket that had somehow unlocked the voice of a child who had been lost in trauma. His presence had created a bridge between Emma's silence and her need for justice. As Emma continued to pet Rex and find her words, everyone in courtroom 4C knew they were witnessing something extraordinary, the moment when a victim began to reclaim her power. With Rex sitting steadily beside the witness stand, Emma Rodriguez began to transform before everyone's eyes. The frightened, silent child who had entered the courtroom was becoming someone else entirely, a brave young witness ready to face her demons. Her small hand remained resting on Rex's head, drawing strength from the calm, steady presence of the police dog who had somehow unlocked her voice. Prosecutor Linda Walsh approached carefully, knowing that this moment was as fragile as spun glass. One wrong question, one misstep, and Emma might retreat back into her protective silence forever. "Emma, can you tell us about the night the bad man came to your house?" Emma's fingers tightened slightly in Rex's fur, but her voice remained steady. "It was really late. I was sleeping in my bed with Buddy. He always slept with me, even though Mama said he was too big." A small smile flickered across her face as she looked down at Rex. Buddy was just like this good dog, big and strong and brave. The courtroom leaned forward collectively, hanging on every word. Maria Rodriguez pressed a tissue to her mouth, overwhelmed by hearing her daughter's voice after months of agonizing silence. Carlos gripped the wooden bench in front of him so tightly his knuckles turned white. "What woke you up that night, Emma?" Walsh continued gently. Buddy started growling, Emma said, her voice growing more confident as she stroked Rex's ears. It was a scary growl, not like when he played. His whole body got stiff, and he jumped off my bed really fast. I heard glass breaking downstairs. Detective Chun watched in amazement as Rex seemed to sense exactly when Emma needed reassurance. Whenever her voice began to waver, the dog would shift slightly, reminding her of his presence without disrupting her testimony. "What did you do when you heard the glass breaking?" Walsh asked. "I got scared, but Buddy told me to stay quiet." Emma paused, then looked around the courtroom. "I know dogs can't really talk, but Buddy always told me things with his eyes. He looked at me real serious, and I knew I had to hide. Where did you hide? In my closet. Mama always said if bad men ever came to our house, I should hide in my closet and be very, very quiet. Emma's voice began to shake slightly, but Rex pressed his head closer to her hand, and she steadied. But I left the door open just a little bit so I could see Buddy. I had to make sure he was okay. Marcus Thompson, who had been lounging casually in his chair throughout the trial, now sat rigidly upright. Sweat had begun to form on his forehead as he listened to Emma's detailed account. His attorney, James Mitchell, frantically scribbled notes, trying to find weaknesses in the child's testimony. What did you see from the closet, Emma? Walsh asked. Emma took a deep breath, burying her face in Rex's neck for a moment before continuing. I saw the bad man walk into my room. He had a flashlight, and when the light hit his arm, I saw a big snake tattoo going all the way up to his shoulder. It was scary and ugly. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Thompson's snake tattoo was clearly visible to everyone present, exactly as Emma had described. He was wearing a torn jacket, Emma continued, gaining momentum. Blue jeans with holes in the knees and dirty white shoes. He smelled bad, like cigarettes and something else yucky. What happened when the bad man entered your room? Buddy jumped at him and started barking really loud. The bad man yelled bad words and tried to hit Buddy with his flashlight, but Buddy was too fast. Emma's voice grew stronger as she recounted her dog's bravery. Buddy bit the bad man's leg real hard, and the man screamed and dropped something shiny on the floor. Prosecutor Walsh pulled out an evidence bag containing Thompson's wallet found at the scene. Emma, is this what the bad man dropped? Emma nodded vigorously. Yes, it fell right by my door. I saw it when the flashlight rolled under my bed. What happened next? Emma's expression grew sad as she continued petting Rex. The bad man kicked Buddy really hard. My brave doggy yelped, but he didn't stop protecting me. He kept barking and growling, even when the bad man hurt him. Tears began forming in Emma's eyes, but she didn't stop talking. Rex seemed to sense her emotional pain and gently nuzzled her arm. The bad man got really mad because Buddy wouldn't stop barking. He pulled out something from his pocket, something long and metal. But then Mr. Peterson from next door started yelling outside because Buddy's barking woke him up. What did the bad man do when he heard your neighbor? He got scared and ran toward the window, but Buddy chased him and bit his leg again, even harder this time. The bad man was limping when he climbed out my window. There was blood on the floor where he had been standing. The jury was completely captivated by Emma's testimony. Several jurors were openly crying as they listened to this brave child describe how her beloved pet had died protecting her. Emma, Walsh said carefully, did you get a good look at the bad man's face? Yes, Emma said without hesitation, looking directly at Marcus Thompson for the first time. It was him, the man sitting over there with the snake tattoo. When he turned around to run from Buddy, the hallway light was on, and I saw his whole face. He has a scar on his chin and mean eyes. Thompson shifted uncomfortably as every person in the courtroom turned to stare at him. The scar Emma had mentioned was clearly visible, a thin white line across his jaw. Are you absolutely certain, Emma? Walsh asked. Emma squeezed Rex's fur and nodded firmly. I'm sure. I'll never forget his face, because he's the man who killed my buddy. For the first time, Emma's voice broke as she spoke about her dog's death. After the bad man ran away, I found Buddy in the hallway. He was hurt really bad, but he was still trying to wag his tail when he saw me. I stayed with him until Mama and Papa came home. The courtroom was completely silent, except for the sound of muffled sobs from the gallery. Emma's raw honesty and detailed memory were devastating to the defense case. But more than that, Her courage in the face of unimaginable trauma was inspiring. Everyone present. Buddy died protecting me, Emma continued, her voice growing stronger again as she looked at Rex. He was the best dog in the whole world, and he saved my life. Just like Rex saves people too. Detective Chun felt a lump forming in her throat as she watched the connection between Emma and Rex deepen. This wasn't just about testimony anymore. This was about healing, about a traumatized child finding her way back to trust and hope through the unconditional love of a dog. Defense attorney Mitchell knew his case was crumbling, but he wasn't ready to surrender. He stood slowly, preparing for a cross-examination that he knew would be the most challenging of his career. How do you attack the credibility of a child who had just demonstrated such remarkable courage and clarity? Emma, he began carefully, you've been through something very scary. Sometimes when we're frightened, our memories can play tricks on. My memory doesn't play tricks, Emma interrupted, surprising everyone with her firmness. She looked Mitchell directly in the eyes. I remember everything about that night. I remember because Buddy died, and I'll never forget anything about the man who killed him. The power in Emma's voice silenced Mitchell's objection before he could voice it. This wasn't a confused, traumatized child anymore. This was a witness who had found her strength, and she was ready to see justice served for the dog who had given his life to save hers. Defense attorney James Mitchell stood frozen for several moments, staring at Emma Rodriguez with the dawning realization that his career was built on moments like this, and he had never encountered anything quite like what was unfolding before him. The confident, traumatized child sitting before him, drawing strength from a police dog, was systematically destroying every aspect of his defense strategy. Emma, Mitchell began again, his voice carefully modulated to sound gentle and non-threatening. You said it was very dark that night. How can you be sure about what you saw? Emma didn't hesitate. She looked directly at Mitchell with eyes that seemed far older than her 8 years. The hallway light was on because Mama always leaves it on for me. And when the bad man turned around to run from Buddy, his face was right in the light. I saw everything. She turned slightly to stroke Rex's head again, the contact seeming to give her additional courage. I saw his mean eyes, the scar on his chin, and the way his mouth twisted when he said bad words at Buddy. I'll never forget his face because he killed my best friend. Mitchell felt sweat beginning to form under his expensive suit. He had cross-examined hundreds of witnesses, including children, but Emma's unwavering certainty and detailed memory were unlike anything he had encountered. Worse, her obvious bond with Rex was making her sympathetic to the jury in a way that would be impossible to overcome. Sometimes children think they see things, Mitchell began. I don't think I saw him, Emma interrupted, her voice rising with indignation. I know I saw him. He's sitting right there. She pointed directly at Marcus Thompson, who couldn't meet her gaze. He has the same snake tattoo, the same scar, and the same mean eyes. Judge Martinez watched the exchange with growing admiration for Emma's resilience. In 25 years on the bench, she had seen countless witnesses crumble under cross-examination, but this child was growing stronger with each question. Prosecutor Walsh observed from her table, hardly daring to believe what she was witnessing. Emma's testimony was not only detailed and credible, it was devastatingly effective. The jury was completely engaged, several members openly emotional, as they listened to this brave child describe her ordeal. Emma, Mitchell tried a different approach. You've been through counseling since that night. Did any of the doctors or therapists help you remember details about what happened? Nobody helped me remember, Emma said firmly, scratching behind Rex's ears in a way that made the dog's tail twitch with contentment. I always remembered everything. The doctors and therapists just wanted me to talk about it, but I couldn't. It hurt too much inside. and I was too scared. What made you able to talk about it today? Emma looked down at Rex with pure affection. Rex makes me feel safe. When I see him, I remember that there are good dogs and good people who fight against bad people. Buddy fought for me, and Rex fights for other people. They're heroes. The sincerity in her voice was so pure, so genuine, that even some of the hardened court officers found themselves wiping away tears. This wasn't a coached witness or a child who had been manipulated into saying certain things. This was a little girl speaking her truth with a kind of honesty that only children possess. Mitchell made one final attempt. Emma, you've said that seeing Rex reminds you of Buddy. Isn't it possible that your emotions about your dog are affecting what you remember about that night? For the first time since beginning her testimony, Emma's face showed anger. Her hand stilled on Rex's head, and she sat up straighter in the witness chair. My emotions aren't wrong, she said with surprising force. I loved Buddy, and Buddy loved me, and the bad man killed him. That's not emotions. That's what happened. She leaned forward slightly, looking directly at Mitchell. Why are you trying to make it sound like I'm lying? I'm not lying. Buddy died saving me from him. She pointed at Thompson again. And now you're trying to help the man who killed my dog get away with it. The question hung in the air, like an accusation. Mitchell found himself in the impossible position of appearing to bully a traumatized child in front of a sympathetic jury. He glanced at Thompson, who was staring at his hands and sweating profusely. No further questions, Mitchell said quietly, returning to his seat with the defeated posture of a man who knew his case was lost. Prosecutor Walsh stood for redirect examination. Emma, is there anything else you want to tell us about that night? Emma nodded solemnly. After the bad man ran away, and I found Buddy hurt in the hallway, I stayed with him until Mama and Papa came home. Buddy was breathing really hard, and there was blood everywhere, but he was still trying to protect me. Even when he was dying, he put himself between me and the window where the bad man had gone. She paused, stroking Rex's head as if drawing strength from the contact. Before Buddy died, he looked at me one last time. I think he was trying to tell me to be brave, to remember everything so the bad man couldn't hurt other children. The courtroom was completely silent, except for the soft sounds of crying from the gallery. Emma's testimony had gone beyond simple identification. She had painted a picture of heroism, sacrifice, and love that made Thompson's crime even more heinous. Buddy was the best dog in the whole world, Emma concluded, her voice ringing clear and strong. He saved my life, and I want everyone to know how brave he was. Judge Martinez had to pause to compose herself before speaking. Thank you, Emma. You've been very brave today, just like Buddy was that night. As Emma climbed down from the witness stand, she stopped beside Rex and gave him a gentle hug. Thank you for helping me be brave, she whispered. Buddy would have liked you. The prosecution rested their case with Emma's testimony, knowing that nothing could be more powerful than what the jury had just witnessed. The defense had no witnesses to call. How could they present evidence to contradict the honest words of a child who had shown such remarkable courage? The jury deliberation lasted exactly 1 hour and 17 minutes. When they returned, the foreman, a grandfather of 4, had tears in his eyes as he read the verdict. Guilty on all counts, burglary in the first degree, animal cruelty, child endangerment, and assault. Marcus Thompson's head dropped into his hands as the judge scheduled sentencing for the following month. He would face 15 to 20 years in prison. His crime spree finally ended by the brave testimony of the child he had tried to silence through trauma. But the real victory wasn't the guilty verdict. The real victory was Emma Rodriguez finding her voice again, proving that sometimes the most powerful witnesses are the smallest ones, and that healing can come from the most unexpected. Sources, like a police dog who reminded a traumatized child that there were still good things worth trusting in the world. The moment the guilty verdict was read, Courtroom 4C erupted in a symphony of emotion that had been building for months. Applause thundered through the gallery as spectators rose to their feet, many wiping away tears as they witnessed justice finally served. But the most remarkable sight was Emma Rodriguez, who slid down from the witness chair and walked directly to Rex, wrapping her small arms around the German shepherd's neck in a hug that seemed to encompass 6 months of gratitude, healing, and newfound hope. Rex, the disciplined police dog, who had been trained to remain professional in all circumstances, gently lowered his head to accept Emma's embrace. Detective Sarah Chun watched in amazement as her partner, who had always been strictly business during official duties, seemed to understand that this moment transcended protocol. Rex's tail wagged slowly as Emma buried her face in his soft fur, whispering words of thanks that only he could hear. Judge Patricia Martinez removed her glasses and wiped her eyes without shame, something she hadn't done in 25 years of presiding over cases. "In all my years on this bench," she announced to the courtroom, her voice thick with emotion, "I have never witnessed anything more remarkable than what we've seen here today. This young lady has shown courage that would humble grown men, and this exceptional dog has reminded us all that sometimes healing comes from the most unexpected sources." The applause continued as Maria Rodriguez rushed to her daughter, dropping to her knees to embrace both Emma and Rex together. "Mi niña, mi valiente niña," she sobbed in Spanish, calling Emma her brave little girl. Carlos followed close behind, his strong arms encircling his wife and daughter in a family hug that had been 6 months in the making. "Papa," Emma said, looking up at her father with eyes that were bright and alive for the first time since the attack. "Rex helped me remember that there are more good people than bad people in the world. Just like you always told me." Marcus Thompson was led away in handcuffs, his head down in defeat. As he passed the Rodriguez family, Emma looked up from her embrace with Rex and spoke directly to him. "I hope you learn to be a better person. In jail," she said with the simple honesty that only children possess. "Maybe you can get a dog when you get out, and it will teach you how to be good." Even Thompson's hardened expression softened for a moment at the child's unexpected words of hope rather than hatred. Detective Chun knelt beside Emma and Rex, overwhelmed by what her canine partner had accomplished. "Rex has worked hundreds of cases," she told Emma's family, "but I think this might be the most important thing he's ever done. He didn't just help solve a crime, he helped heal a heart." As the courtroom began to empty, several jury members approached the Rodriguez family to express their admiration for Emma's courage. Mary Patterson, a retired teacher who had served as juror number 4, knelt beside Emma. "Sweetheart, you are the bravest person I've ever met. Your buddy would be so proud of you today." "He is proud," Emma said with absolute certainty, stroking Rex's ears. "I can feel him watching us. He's happy that the bad man can't hurt any more children or dogs." The local media had gathered outside the courthouse, having heard rumors of the extraordinary testimony involving a police dog. Channel 12 news reporter Jennifer Martinez, no relation to the judge, approached Detective Chun as the family emerged from the building. "Detective Chun, can you tell us about what happened in there? We're hearing that your canine partner played a crucial role in getting the victim to testify." Chun looked down at Rex, who was walking calmly beside Emma, as if they had been partners for years. Rex did what he does best. He served and protected. Sometimes that means chasing down suspects or finding drugs. Today it meant helping a little girl find her voice so justice could be served. Dr. Lisa Park, a renowned child psychologist, who had been following the case, approached the family with professional curiosity and personal amazement. What we witnessed today challenges everything we thought we knew about treating childhood trauma, she told reporters. Traditional therapy focuses on building trust between the child and a human therapist over many months or years. But Rex created that same trust in minutes through pure, unconditional acceptance. Emma overheard the conversation and tugged on Dr. Park's sleeve. Rex didn't make me remember things, she explained earnestly. He just made me feel safe enough to say what I already remembered. Sometimes you know things in your heart, but you need someone brave next to you to help you say them out loud. The wisdom in Emma's words stunned the assembled adults. Dr. Park later said it was one of the most profound insights into trauma recovery she had ever heard, and it came from an 8-year-old who had just found her voice again. As the crowd of reporters, well-wishers, and court officials began to disperse, Detective Chun made an impromptu decision. "Emma," she said, "would you and your family like to visit Rex and me at the police station sometime? He'd love to see you again, and I think you two have become special friends." Emma's face lit up with the first genuine smile anyone had seen from her in 6 months. "Really? Could I bring him a treat? And could I tell him more stories about Buddy?" "Of course," Chun replied, feeling Rex lean slightly against her leg as if he too was looking forward to the reunion. Prosecutor Linda Walsh joined the group on the courthouse steps, still somewhat dazed by the dramatic turn her case had taken. "Emma, you've not only helped put a dangerous criminal behind bars, but you've also shown every person in that courtroom what real courage looks like. Your testimony will help other children who are scared to speak up." "Other children?" Emma asked, tilting her head with curiosity. "Yes, sweetheart. There are other boys and girls who have been hurt by bad people, and sometimes they're too scared to talk about it, just like you were. But now, because of what you did today, maybe those children will remember that there are good people and good dogs who will help them be brave." Emma considered this for a moment, then looked up at Detective Chun. Could Rex visit other scared children too? He's really good at making people feel safe. Chun exchanged glances with her supervisor, Captain Rodriguez, who had coincidentally arrived just as the trial concluded and saw approval in his eyes. "I think that could be arranged," Chun said. Rex might have just discovered a new way to serve and protect. As the Rodriguez family walked toward their car, Emma skipped beside Rex, chattering excitedly about all the things she wanted to show him when he visited their home. Her parents walked behind them, holding hands and crying tears of joy as they listened to their daughter's voice, animated, happy, and filled with hope for the first time in 6 months. The sun was setting over Phoenix as they reached the parking garage, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Emma stopped and looked back at the courthouse where she had found her voice again. "Buddy," she whispered to the evening air, "I kept my promise. I remembered everything, and the bad man will never hurt anyone else. Rex helped me be as brave as you were." In the distance, a dog barked once, as if in acknowledgement. Emma smiled and took Rex's leash from Detective Chun. "Come on, boy," she said. "Let's go home." The moment the guilty verdict was read, Courtroom 4C erupted in a symphony of emotion that had been building for months. Applause thundered through the gallery as spectators rose to their feet, many wiping away tears as they witnessed justice finally served. But the most remarkable sight was Emma Rodriguez, who slid down from the witness chair and walked directly to Rex, wrapping her small arms around the German shepherd's neck in a hug that seemed to encompass 6 months of gratitude, healing, and newfound hope. Rex, the disciplined police dog, who had been trained to remain professional in all circumstances, gently lowered his head to accept Emma's embrace. Detective Sarah Chun watched in amazement as her partner, who had always been strictly business during official duties, seemed to understand that this moment transcended protocol. Rex's tail wagged slowly as Emma buried her face in his soft fur, whispering words of thanks that only he could hear. Judge Patricia Martinez removed her glasses and wiped her eyes without shame, something she hadn't done in 25 years of presiding over cases. "In all my years on this bench," she announced to the courtroom, her voice thick with emotion, "I have never witnessed anything more remarkable than what we've seen here today. This young lady has shown courage that would humble grown men, and this exceptional dog has reminded us all that sometimes healing comes from the most unexpected sources." The applause continued as Maria Rodriguez rushed to her daughter, dropping to her knees to embrace both Emma and Rex together. "Mi niña, mi valiente niña," she sobbed in Spanish, calling Emma her brave little girl. Carlos followed close behind, his strong arms encircling his wife and daughter in a family hug that had been 6 months in the making. "Papa," Emma said, looking up at her father with eyes that were bright and alive for the first time since the attack. "Rex helped me remember that there are more good people than bad people in the world. Just like you always told me." Marcus Thompson was led away in handcuffs, his head down in defeat. As he passed the Rodriguez family, Emma looked up from her embrace with Rex and spoke directly to him. "I hope you learn to be a better person." "In jail," she said with the simple honesty that only children possess. "Maybe you can get a dog when you get out, and it will teach you how to be good." Even Thompson's hardened expression softened for a moment at the child's unexpected words of hope rather than hatred. Detective Chun knelt beside Emma and Rex, overwhelmed by what her canine partner had accomplished. "Rex has worked hundreds of cases," she told Emma's family, "but I think this might be the most important thing he's ever done. He didn't just help solve a crime, he helped heal a heart." As the courtroom began to empty, several jury members approached the Rodriguez family to express their admiration for Emma's courage. Mary Patterson, a retired teacher who had served as juror number 4, knelt beside Emma. "Sweetheart, you are the bravest person I've ever met. Your buddy would be so proud of you today." "He is proud," Emma said with absolute certainty, stroking Rex's ears. "I can feel him watching us. He's happy that the bad man can't hurt any more children or dogs." The local media had gathered outside the courthouse, having heard rumors of the extraordinary testimony involving a police dog. Channel 12 news reporter Jennifer Martinez, no relation to the judge, approached Detective Chun as the family emerged from the building. "Detective Chun, can you tell us about what happened in there? We're hearing that your canine partner played a crucial role in getting the victim to testify." Chun looked down at Rex, who was walking calmly beside Emma, as if they had been partners for years. Rex did what he does best. He served and protected. Sometimes that means chasing down suspects or finding drugs. Today it meant helping a little girl find her voice so justice could be served. Dr. Lisa Park, a renowned child psychologist, who had been following the case, approached the family with professional curiosity and personal amazement. "What we witnessed today challenges everything we thought we knew about treating childhood trauma," she told reporters. "Traditional therapy focuses on building trust between the child and a human therapist over many months or years. But Rex created that same trust in minutes through pure, unconditional acceptance." Emma overheard the conversation and tugged on Dr. Park's sleeve. "Rex didn't make me remember things," she explained earnestly. "He just made me feel safe enough to say what I already remembered. Sometimes you know things in your heart, but you need someone brave next to you to help you say them out loud." The wisdom in Emma's words stunned the assembled adults. Dr. Park later said it was one of the most profound insights into trauma recovery she had ever heard, and it came from an 8-year-old who had just found her voice again. As the crowd of reporters, well-wishers, and court officials began to disperse, Detective Chun made an impromptu decision. Emma, she said, would you and your family like to visit Rex and me at the police station sometime? He'd love to see you again, and I think you two have become special friends. Emma's face lit up with the first genuine smile anyone had seen from her in 6 months. Really? Could I bring him a treat? And could I tell him more stories about Buddy? Of course, Chun replied, feeling Rex lean slightly against her leg as if he too was looking forward to the reunion. Prosecutor Linda Walsh joined the group on the courthouse steps, still somewhat dazed by the dramatic turn her case had taken. Emma, you've not only helped put a dangerous criminal behind bars, but you've also shown every person in that courtroom what real courage looks like. Your testimony will help other children who are scared to speak up. Other children? Emma asked, tilting her head with curiosity. Yes, sweetheart. There are other boys and girls who have been hurt by bad people, and sometimes they're too scared to talk about it, just like you were. But now, because of what you did today, maybe those children will remember that there are good people and good dogs who will help them be brave. Emma considered this for a moment, then looked up at Detective Chun. Could Rex visit other scared children too? He's really good at making people feel safe. Chun exchanged glances with her supervisor, Captain Rodriguez, who had coincidentally arrived just as the trial concluded and saw approval in his eyes. I think that could be arranged, Chun said. Rex might have just discovered a new way to serve and protect. As the Rodriguez family walked toward their car, Emma skipped beside Rex, chattering excitedly about all the things she wanted to show him when he visited their home. Her parents walked behind them, holding hands and crying tears of joy as they listened to their daughter's voice, animated, happy, and filled with hope for the first time in 6 months. The sun was setting over Phoenix as they reached the parking garage, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Emma stopped and looked back at the courthouse where she had found her voice again. Buddy, she whispered to the evening air, I kept my promise. I remembered everything, and the bad man will never hurt anyone else. Rex helped me be as brave as you were. In the distance, a dog barked once, as if in acknowledgement. Emma smiled and took Rex's leash from Detective Chun. Come on, boy, she said. Let's go home.